Russia is scaling up the production of drones, terrorizing the civilian population of Ukraine and waging a war of attrition. Today we will talk about the real plans of the occupiers and possible options for ending the war in Ukraine. What is a possible real scenario for Ukraine to win this war? We'll also touch on the topic of aid from the United States. How much can we expect this year? We're talking about all this with Julian Röpcke, build analyst. Mr. Röpcke, thank you for joining us.
Good afternoon.
So my first question, the President of the United States has offered Russian dictator Vladimir Putin quite attractive terms to a ceasefire in the Russian war against Ukraine. A pause would not only allow the occupiers to recover, but could also potentially lead to the lifting of some sanctions and give Moscow a chance to normalize relations with Washington. This is reported by the publication Foreign Affairs. So why didn't Putin agree to the ceasefire? What is your opinion?
Well, I think first and foremost, we heard Mr. Peskov today in St. Petersburg saying we are not interested in a ceasefire. It is not in our interest because, as he said, the dynamics are going to our favor. The dynamics is we are advancing on the battlefield. So why should we agree to a ceasefire? And I think as harsh as this is, it makes sense from a Russian point of view. The advance slowed down a little bit over the last, I would say, 2 or 3 weeks. But before we had quite big advances towards Sumy, as well as towards the Dnipropetrovsk Oblast borders from different directions in Donetsk. So this is understandable, I think, from their point of view, because there's no pressure, as you said, rightfully. They're getting some incentives, which means they can keep for at least 30 days, I would say 30 years or more, everything they captured so far. And they would get a sanctions release, but they see the opportunity to get more. They don't see the need to halt their offensive right now. Because, as you know, they are still mobilizing many Russians. Russians are living in such bad conditions that they are ready to sacrifice their lives for some money and some kilometers or some 100 meters in Ukraine before they are getting killed. So unfortunately, it's still going on. And last but not least, the Americans cannot offer Putin anything they do not control. So I heard from many European leaders and officials that if the Americans are stopping their sanctions, the Europeans will not follow path because European Union sees it differently. We will not lift the sanctions as long as Russia occupies Ukraine. And of course, this is most of the sanctions part right now. There are some US sanctions, but they are not as relevant as the European ones.
It is desirable to end the war during this term of President Trump. I'm very much counting on his help. That was Zelensky said. Trump's term ends in 2029. Does this rhetoric mean that the active phase of the war could last until 2029? And how do you think? It's a little bit ironic from the Zelensky side, or what does it mean? How realistic is this, considering the losses and resources that what you are talking about?
Yeah. Well, I totally understand that Mr. President Zelensky wants the war to end as soon as possible, and he wants the war to end in President Trump's terms because, as you rightfully said, he will be another 3 years in power. So, of course, it would be absolutely in Ukraine's favor if there would be a ceasefire or an end of hostilities in this term. It shouldn't be 2029. It should be now. I think this is what Mr. Zelensky really wants. On the other side, I think he is hoping for a lot and maybe too much, because we have not seen any signs from the Trump administration to pump up pressure on Russia. We have not seen any new arms deliveries. We heard that the Biden administration gave some weapons which are still to be delivered this year. I think the total worth is $2.6 billion. I think this is what is said. And I think this is it. We haven't seen any new deliveries so far from what they are doing. So I think it's very optimistic of Mr. Zelensky to think of something to happen which we have absolutely no indication for. And I have to say, not only Mr. Zelensky is too optimistic, but also other German leaders, other European leaders, like the German Chancellor, who has been saying, we all agree now, we are all online with Mr. Trump, and we hope for something good in Senate. And unfortunately, this echoes exactly what we hear from Lindsey Graham and other Republican senators, which are telling us for 3 months now that within 2 weeks, the Trump administration will do something, and nothing happens. So I think, realistically speaking, I'm not expecting anything from Mr. Trump. He was asked 2 days ago if he heard that 28 people were killed in Kiev in the morning, and he asked for the city. He didn't even remember the conflict anymore because he's now engaged in Iran, and it looks like he cannot deal with 2 conflicts at the same time from what his abilities as a president give him.
We'll talk about this later, and our hope is based on the fact that we have no alternative in this war.
Yes.
Correspondent Christoph Schills gave 3 predictions for the end of this war. Among the 3 scenarios, the one that could be advantageous for Ukraine would be one in which Western countries would continue to actively supply modern weapons to Ukraine and tighten economic sanctions against Russia. What is currently lacking for our partners to implement such a scenario? I'm not asking what situation is now. I understand what is going on now. What can be an argument?
Well, I think the political will is missing there. It's absolutely lagging. I think no one really wants Russia to lose this war. Again, not a single European country is giving 0.5% of its GDP to Ukraine. Not a single European country. Estonia had this offer of having 0.25% of the budget to be military aid for Ukraine. No one is doing this. A couple of countries are doing this, but they're not very big. So what I want to say is that all European countries would have it in their power to give Ukraine the ability to beat the Russian army. But as it's not happening, while our leaders are saying the opposite, I would say that there's no interest in this. This is what's simply behind it. We could have the situation that we gave Ukraine modern weapons. We have seen from the very beginning, it was 5,000 helmets first, then it were some air defense weapons, shoulder-based. Then it were the first tanks, then it were howitzers, then it were F-16 jets. This is what we are giving now. So you could see that if we would have surprised Russia with all of this at once, at the same time, it would have been a surprise for Russia. Right now, we are in a situation, unfortunately, where Ukraine gets more F-16s, but no means to safeguard the airfields anymore. So how do F-16s help if you need airports which have to be safeguarded once again by air defense? And Ukraine is, everyone knows this, running out of Patriot and Iris-T missiles. So the strategy of the West is no real strategy. We're just giving a little bit drip and drip after each other. And we always give Russia time to adapt to everything like this. And this is the situation we have right now. This is one reason beside that Russia is mobilizing 45,000 men per month, I would say, and Ukraine has big problems here. So this is another reason why we have not seen any significant liberation or recapture since November 2022.
It's a pretty common question, but does Europe not feel they're threatened by Russia?
I think we are feeling threatened by Russia, especially our politicians, and this is why they don't want Russia to be in a situation where they could use arms or targets they didn't target before. So everyone thinks that if Russia is slowly winning in Ukraine, they will keep doing what they're doing. They will keep terrorizing Ukrainian civilians. They will keep conquering Ukrainian villages and small towns in the east, and they will keep killing, I would say, 50 to 100 Ukrainian soldiers a day. And this is, I think, as harsh as it sounds, and I know it sounds very bad, and I think it's cynical, but I think this is a sort of stable situation for many European leaders, which they are fine with, which they think they can manage, and which does not include the risk of Russia, for example, at the same time striking the Baltic states.
Meanwhile, Russia is scaling up the production of Shahits and continues to use them mainly on civilian targets, not military ones. Today, it again targeted residential buildings in Kharkiv and Odessa. What is the Russians trying to achieve by increasing the terror on the civilian population?
Yes, I think Russia is clearly increasing the production. You're absolutely right. We have heard from Ukrainian analysts that the number of daily Shahits might go up to 500. I would not entirely agree that they only use them on civilian targets, because if you see what's being used every day, it's like, as I said, 200 to 500. And I know 70% maybe are shot down, which still means 100 hit their targets. If 100 Shahits...
I'm sorry, I just hear it every single night, so I know what I'm talking about. It's a civilian terror.
Yeah. I'm just asking you, if 100 Shahits which are coming through would be hitting 100 houses in Ukraine every night, you would have more than 10 dead. It sounds very bad, because I know every dead is too much, and I know there are days where you have 28 dead because a Shahid hits a civilian building. But altogether, if you see what they have, and if they would just direct these 400 Shahis at Kharkiv, then you would have 400 or 200 houses hit on one night, not 5 houses. So I think they could achieve even more massacre if they want. I think the goal is to terrorize the population. As you say, you are hearing it. It doesn't mean you're getting hit, but you are hearing it. You cannot sleep. You feel the terror every night. I heard it myself, by the way. I was under flight bombs. I was under Shahits in Kharkiv, in Slavyansk, in Kramatorsk, in Dnipro, wherever I was just 4 months ago. So I know exactly what you're meaning. I'm just saying, I think they are also hitting infrastructure. They are trying to hit logistic hubs. It's not military targets, but it is whatever they think is important for the war to continue, which means, for example, train hubs, which means, for example, different locations which they think are important for the logistics to keep up, for the transport, for the fuel. You know that many of the Shahits are hitting factories, for example, and are hitting power plants, so you have no energy. And this is, I think, a big problem there. Of course, many of them also hit civilian buildings. But my argument is just, if they would all be directed at civilian buildings, you wouldn't have 10 dead normally on a day, but you would have 100 or 200 or 300 people dead on a day.
What is your opinion? What is China's role in Russia's ability to increase drone production?
So I have to move a little bit. Okay. Well, we know that China is providing lots of dual-use goods. They are providing the technology. They have no problem with this. We have seen them even providing individual laser guns. I think we have seen this recently. We have seen them providing lots of weapons which can be used for the war. And of course, China always says, yeah, but this is not military. This is we just do not forbid the export of some goods. But I think they are. I mean, this is helping Russia a lot. I think it's giving Russia an absolute lifeline. And we know from their partners when it comes to their resource export, I think the number 1 is China, number 2 is India, number 3 is Turkey. So these are the 3 countries which are giving Russia an economic lifeline. It's much more important than all European countries combined. It's much more important than the United States. And this is interesting again, because when you're talking about sanctions, the only sanctions that would work is sanctioning China, India, and Turkey, which we are not doing right now. There are no secondary sanctions, neither from the United States nor from the European Union. So all this, I think, shows that there is a tight connection between China on the one side and Russia on the other side. But you may not forget countries like India, Pakistan, and Turkey, which are, as some of them are providing weapons to Ukraine, like Turkey is still the biggest lifeline for Russia's economy. And this is why also for Russia's war economy to go on.
There is also information that the Russian motorized Shahits are equipped with built-in artificial intelligence. What do you know about the modernization of Russian drones? What is the danger of such modernization?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I have seen some of these drones in action, and the Ukrainian army has downed some of them. And it's really terrible because these AI-powered drones, they have no conscience, I would say. For example, Germany provides AI-powered drones to Ukraine. It's called HF1 from Helsing. But in the end, you always have an operator there. You have an operator saying, yes, this is a military target. Log on the military target, go there, destroy it. The Russians are doing differently. The Russians are just giving the Shahid or whatever drone the information, fly 200 kilometers and then hit whatever you want. We have seen this in Sumy when they hit buses, for example. So this is how they test these drones. And that's really dangerous, I would say. It's easier for the Russians because they just say, okay, we have no connection to them anymore. It doesn't matter. They will hit something. And of course, they will hit something civilian because for these drones, it's impossible to distinguish between an SUV which transports soldiers and an SUV which transports a family. Also, they are going far behind the front, which means the further you are away from the front, the more certain it is you find a civilian car and not a military car. And I think Russia doesn't really care about this. And that's really bad to give a drone, which is armored, AI, but no conscience. So no operator, no one to say, okay, and this is a good target and this is a bad target. So I think that's really, really bad what's happening there. You were also talking about the new engines. I think we are seeing these Geran 3 right now. So the new generation there, they are even they're faster. They are harder to stop because they are faster. So many of the Ukrainian mobile teams are trying to down them with Brownings, machine guns. And this is, of course, much harder if you have a 600 kilometer per hour drone than when you have a 200 kilometer per hour drone. So I think, yes, Russia is developing. Russia is quite innovative when it comes to killing Ukrainian civilians, when it comes to terrorizing Ukrainian citizens. And unfortunately, this is a process which is ongoing.
Shoigu was visited the People's Democratic Republic of Korea in the last few weeks. What terms of partnership could have been negotiated?
Well, I think he was basically there to say thank you to Kim Jong-un because just because of the North Koreans, they recaptured Kursk. That was their only chance. I mean, they were not standing a chance against these, I would say, 5,000 Ukrainian soldiers, which were for 9 months occupying parts of Kursk, which was a very effective operation to draw in many resources from the Russians. And, in the end, it was 12,000 North Korean soldiers, as well as North Korean weapons, which were needed by the Russian army to recapture a tiny area, which didn't even have the size of Berlin, but still they needed these troops. And you have just seen recently probably that it was not only soldiers, it was also self-propelled artillery like this Koksan. It was also this M1991 240 millimeter multiple rocket launcher. So the North Koreans also gave heavy weapons. And I think this was quite important for them. And you could see just in Iran now, ironically, that what does Russia give? What happens if these partners of the strategic agreements, they have the same one with Iran as they have with North Korea. What if these partners are in trouble? Yeah, nothing. You can see this. Russia is just ignoring its allies. They're just throwing them under the train because they don't want to look bad in front of Donald Trump. So this is quite interesting. And I think also if there's any severe fighting, severe confrontation in North Korea against South Korea, for example, Russia wouldn't help there. Of course, Russia is giving some of their technology there. I've seen that they have provided Lancet technology to North Korea. I know they have provided Sukhoi Su-35 technology to Iran before, but they're only cooperating in peace times, I would say. As soon as there's a conflict, while they are demanding from their partner to provide, for example, Shahid drones from Iran, they're not giving anything to these partners in terms of war. And this should be a warning sign, I would say, to everyone, like Kazakhstan, like Kyrgyzstan, like even Belarus. It should be a warning sign to everyone that Russia will not help them, even though these countries are helping Russia in times of war.
I'd like to talk about the Iran-Israel conflict. How significantly has the tension in the information space shifted from the issue of the Russian-Ukraine war to the military actions of Israel and Iran? What consequences could such a shift in attention in the information space for Ukraine?
Yes, I would say it's not good for Ukraine. As I mentioned before, President Trump couldn't even remember there's a war going on in Ukraine and that the Russians keep killing Ukrainian civilians every day. But also from a diplomatic point of view, we know that the German foreign minister is in Geneva, I think, right now, to meeting with the Iranian counterpart, or not counterpart, but with the Iranian delegation there. So there's a lot of effort right now to not have another war going on, and as well as from the public attention. You know that publics, I would say, as a media representative, you know this, I know this. When it comes to foreign wars, it's really hard for the domestic public to concentrate on more than one war. So I think right now, at least in Germany, the focus is absolutely on Iran and on Israel, on what's happening between these two countries. Also, of course, lots of the resources of the media companies are going into this direction. So this means there's less attention for Russia's ongoing, campaign, terror against Ukraine. So I think it's bad from many points of views for Ukraine. Some people are saying that because of Iran as a partner of Russia, this might be bad, but I don't see this so far because, as I said, Russia is absolutely not investing anything into this conflict. They're just saying that it's bad. They are, I think, condemning Israel's actions. So this is also interesting. They're clearly taking sides, not with a country which has hundreds of thousands of Russian citizens in it, Israel, but with a country that is a Muslim majority country and which is, as many are claiming, at least clandestinely building nuclear bombs.
I'm trying to touch all the main topics in the information space of this week. So my next question about the NATO summit. NATO is changing the format of its current summit for adjust to Trump's conditions. How protected do you think the alliance countries feel today, especially those bordering Russia?
Well, I have just been to these countries. I have taken part as a journalist in Operation Hedgehog, which was a military exercise in Estonia. And from what I'm seeing, these countries are trying to get along without the United States. I mean, the Americans are still there. But no one knows if they would really enter the war against Russia if there would be a Russian invasion. I think many people are doubting this, which is why the Baltic states are also buying lots of weapons right now, including HIMARS, including different systems which could also be used in Ukraine, frankly saying, but they're buying them for themselves because they think one day Russia will attack them, no one will help them, at least no one outside Europe. I've seen them training with German units, British units, French units, Finnish units. I think some Swedes were also there. So there's some cooperation, and they are, I think, betting on these strong European countries, which are helping them. But I wouldn't say so much on the United States. So I don't know what will be happening during the NATO summit. As you have seen some days ago, when there was a G7 summit, Trump was only there for some hours and then said he had to go. And when Macron tried to defend him and said he wants to negotiate peace with Iran, he said that Macron is always getting it wrong and not understanding anything. So no one really knows what Trump wants, if he will appear at all, if he thinks it's worth more than 6 hours of its time. I think it's really hard to say right now. And unfortunately, we are in a situation where neither the United States nor Germany, unfortunately, are willing to accept even the perspective of a Ukrainian membership. So I would say the NATO alliance is not in its strongest stance right now.
Okay, and I'd like to summarize our conversation with the question that is very important for Ukraine now. Pete Hegseth recently announced a possible reduction in U.S. support for Ukraine. What do you think Ukraine can get in the new aid package from the Trump administration? And how fast can it be? Because time is very important for us.
I'm sorry, this is the last question, but the answer is nothing. I mean, there's no Trump package for Ukraine. As I said before, we do not even know if he will come back to this war at all. He's sending Witkoff there and at some other places to negotiate something. We have today heard, at least seen media reports that Ukraine is absolutely not happy with Mr. Witkoff, and the Americans, it was said, are absolutely not happy with Mr. Yermak. I think I've read this in Politico today, that they want another person of contact. They think it's not going anywhere. So I wouldn't bet on the United States at all anymore. This is what I would guess to Ukraine. I mean, you have some partners in European Union which are closer by. Unfortunately, as I said before, they're also not giving Ukraine the means to win this, but only the means to keep fighting, I would say, and keep slowly losing territory at the same time. But I would say, I mean, Ukraine has shown in the past that it is able to conduct operations deep inside Russia, deep inside the enemy state, which can really shake the strategic bomber fleet, for example. We have seen in the past that Ukraine has been able to strike the Kremlin. It hasn't been happening ever since, I think for political reasons, because there was some pressure. But right now, I think Ukraine should think twice before they give in to any pressure from the Americans, because you really have to ask yourself, how much are they still helping? How much is there left from the Biden administration in terms of military aid? Yes, as long as it's coming, I would also say take it. Of course, it's better than not having this. But as long as there is not a single sign, not a single symbol on the horizon that Trump is changing his mind and suddenly pressuring Russia, which again, Lindsey Graham and others are saying for I think 3 months now that it will start within 2 weeks. And it's not starting. I would say do not bet on the Americans. You try to get out of this alone if you can. Try to have these operations which you had in the past, because they are shocking the Russian military, shocking the Russian public. And this is, I think, one of the few ways out of this, because Russia will keep fighting in Ukraine. They are not interested in a ceasefire. They want at least what they annexed in 2022. And we already heard this, and we are seeing this on the ground. They did not annex Kharkiv Oblast. They did not annex Sumy Oblast, and they're trying to advance in both regions. So I would say right now, more or less with the help of European partners, Ukraine is on its own, and it has to think of strategies without the Americans to keep fighting.
Mr. Röpcke, I would be honest, it is not very inspiring news for us. You understand this? And
I'm so sorry. It's always the same.
It's okay. And I'm very appreciate you for this truth, for your analytics. And I'll remind our viewers, Mr. Röpcke, build analyst, was the guest of this stream. Thank you.
Thank you very much.